Sharon Monroe's hands were shaking so hard that the microphone on the witness stand picked up the vibration. A low hum buzzed through the speakers of the federal courtroom in Beverly Hills, and the court reporter glanced up from her machine with a frown. Sharon pressed her palms flat against the wooden ledge in front of her, trying to steady herself, but it was no use. Her entire body felt like it was plugged into a live wire. The courtroom was packed. Every bench in the gallery was full. Reporters sat shoulder to shoulder in the press section with their notebooks open and their phones recording. Federal marshals stood at every door. The air conditioning was turned up high, but Sharon could feel sweat running down the back of her neck, soaking into the collar of her blouse. She was wearing the nicest thing she owned. A simple black blouse and gray slacks she had bought at a Nordstrom rack 2 days ago because her public defender told her she needed to look professional. She had spent 45 minutes that morning trying to tame her natural hair into something presentable, finally pulling it back into a low bun that she hoped said credible witness and not woman falling apart. Because she was falling apart. Every cell in her body was screaming at her to get out of that chair, to run, to take back every word she had given the prosecution in her deposition. But she couldn't. She was already sworn in, already on the record, already past the point of no return. Across the courtroom, behind the defense table, sat Kang Woo-jin. He was wearing a navy suit. His posture was perfect. His dark hair was pushed back from his forehead, and his jaw was set in a hard line that could have been carved from granite. He sat perfectly still, his hands folded on the table in front of him, his shoulders square. He looked like a man in complete control. But his eyes told a different story. Woo-jin was not glaring at her. He was not angry. He was not shooting her the kind of look that powerful men give to people who have crossed them. Instead, he was watching her with an expression that Sharon could only describe as grief. Like a man watching the person he loved most in the world drive a knife slowly into his chest and choosing not to stop her. Sharon forced herself to look away from him. She could not do this if she kept looking at him. She would break. She would crumble right here in front of 100 strangers and a dozen cameras, and everything she had gone through to get to this moment would mean nothing. The prosecutor, a sharp-featured woman named Angela Torres with a sleek bob and a reputation for dismantling white-collar defendants, stood up from her table and adjusted her reading glasses. "Miss Monroe," she said, her voice carrying through the silent courtroom, "can you please confirm for the court your relationship to the defendant, Kang Woo-jin?" Sharon swallowed. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "I was his live-in housekeeper," she said, "for approximately 5 months. And during that time, did you have access to the defendant's private residence in Atherton, California?" "Yes." "Including his private study?" Sharon's stomach clenched. She could feel Woo-jin's gaze on her like sunlight through a magnifying glass. She did not look at him. "Yes," she said. "And during your time in the defendant's home, did you observe and photograph financial documents that you believed to be evidence of an illegal scheme? Specifically, a network of shell companies used to funnel money into influencing city development contracts in Beverly Hills, Palo Alto, and Scottsdale, Arizona." "Yes, I did." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge, a gray-haired man with thick eyebrows and no patience for noise, tapped his gavel once. "And you provided those photographs to a federal agent?" "I believed she was a federal agent, yes." Prosecutor Torres paused. She glanced at the jury, making sure they registered that answer, and then continued. "Miss Monroe, I understand this is difficult, but can you tell the court, in your own words, why you chose to cooperate with the investigation?" Sharon closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one. Behind her eyelids, she saw Woo-jin's face the night he reached for her hand across the kitchen counter. She saw the way his fingers had trembled, just barely, like even that small act of vulnerability cost him something enormous. She opened her eyes. "Because I believed he was breaking the law," she said, "and I believed I was doing the right thing." The defense attorney, a composed Korean-American man named Philip Yun, stood immediately. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness's belief is not evidence. The prosecution is leading the witness to characterize documents she is not qualified to interpret. Sustained, the judge said. Counselor Torres, move on. The questioning continued for another 40 minutes. Sharon answered every question. She confirmed dates, locations, described the layout of Woo Jin's study, identified the photographs she had taken on her phone. She kept her voice as steady as she could. She did not cry. She did not look at Woo Jin. And then the prosecution rested. The courtroom expected a cross-examination. Philip Yun was known for aggressive, surgical cross-examinations that left witnesses stammering. But instead of approaching the witness stand, Yun stood, buttoned his jacket, and said something that made every reporter in the room sit up straight. Your Honor, my client has waived his right to a formal closing statement. Instead, he is requesting permission to address the court directly with a personal confession. The gallery erupted. The judge banged his gavel 3 times. Prosecutor Torres shot to her feet, objecting. But Philip Yun calmly cited a provision allowing the defendant to make a personal statement for the record, and after a tense sidebar, the judge allowed it. Woo Jin stood. He buttoned his suit jacket. He walked around the defense table with the kind of measured calm that made the air in the room feel heavier. He did not approach the judge. He did not face the jury. He walked to the center of the courtroom and turned to face Sharon. Their eyes met. And when he opened his mouth and began to speak, something inside Sharon that she had been holding together with wire and willpower and sheer stubbornness finally snapped. The tears came before she could stop them. Not quiet, dignified tears. The kind that twisted her face and stole her breath and made her chest heave so violently that the bailiff stepped forward, one hand raised, thinking she was having a medical episode. Sharon waved him off without looking away from Woo Jin. She could not look away. She could not stop listening. Because what Woo Jin was confessing had nothing to do with shell companies or city contracts or financial crimes. And every single word of it was breaking her heart. But we need to go back, 8 months back, to the beginning, to the day Sharon Monroe walked through the iron gates of the Kang estate with one suitcase and a desperate need for a paycheck, and stumbled into the life of a man who would change everything she thought she knew about trust, power, and love. Now here is a question for you. If someone offered you double your salary, but warned you that nobody lasts more than a month in that job, would you still take it? Think about it. I want to see your response in the comment, and do well to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. Now let's continue. 8 months before that courtroom, before the testimony, before the tears, before any of it, Sharon Monroe was sitting on the edge of a twin bed in a studio apartment in East Palo Alto, staring at her bank account on her phone. The number on the screen was $412. Her rent was due in 6 days. Her brother Desmond's tuition gap payment was due in 9. She needed at least $2,200 in the next 2 weeks, and she had no idea where it was going to come from. Sharon was 26 years old. She had warm brown skin, high cheekbones, and dark eyes that people always described as serious. She was not tall. She was not loud. She had learned a long time ago that the best way to survive in the kind of world she moved through, the world of rich people's houses, of luxury kitchens and marble bathrooms and closets bigger than her apartment, was to be invisible. Do the work. Keep your head down. Do not make eye contact for too long. Do not have opinions. Do not take up space. She had been doing domestic work for a luxury staffing agency for 3 years, cycling through mansions in the wealthiest zip codes in the Bay Area. Tech founders, hedge fund managers, venture capitalists. She cleaned their homes, organized their pantries, laundered their sheets, and disappeared. She was good at it. She was reliable. She never complained. All of her money went to one place, her younger brother, Desmond. He was 19 and in his sophomore year at UCLA on a partial academic scholarship. The scholarship covered tuition but not housing, not books, not the meal plan, not any of the 1,000 small costs that piled up every semester. Sharon covered the gap. She had been covering the gap since Desmond started college, and before that, she had been covering everything else: groceries, rent, utilities. Since their mother, Patricia Monroe, died of ovarian cancer when Sharon was 20 years old. Their mother's death had ended Sharon's own education. She had been enrolled in community college, studying early childhood development. She dropped out 2 weeks after the funeral to take her first cleaning job. She never went back. There was never time. There was never money. There was always Desmond. Sharon did not resent it. Desmond was the smartest person she had ever known. He was going to be somebody. He was going to have the life their mother had dreamed about for both of them, but only one of them would get to live. Sharon had made peace with that math a long time ago. Her phone buzzed. It was her staffing agency. "We have a new placement," the coordinator said. "Long-term, live-in Atherton." Sharon's eyebrows went up. Atherton was one of the wealthiest zip codes in the entire country. The homes there cost tens of millions of dollars. The pay for live-in work in Atherton was always significantly higher than anywhere else. "Who's the client?" she asked. "A Mr. Kang Woo-jin, head of the Kang Group. It's a Korean-American household, so there are going to be specific cultural expectations around formality and protocol. The household manager will brief you on arrival." "What's the pay?" The coordinator told her. Sharon almost dropped her phone. It was double her usual rate. Double. "What's the catch?" Sharon asked, because there was always a catch. "Honestly, the last 3 housekeepers all quit within a month. One lasted 11 days. The household is very particular. The schedule is very rigid. The client is very private. But if you can stick it out, this could be a long-term situation." Sharon thought about her bank account. She thought about Desmond's tuition. She thought about the twin bed she was sitting on in the studio apartment she could barely afford. "I'll take it," she said. 3 days later, Sharon pulled up to the Kang estate in her 12-year-old Honda Civic. The car looked absurd next to the iron gates, which were sleek and modern, flanked by stone pillars and security cameras. The gates opened automatically after she pressed the intercom and gave her name, and she drove up a long, curved driveway lined with Japanese maple trees. The house was enormous, not a mansion in the gaudy reality TV sense. It was a modern compound, clean lines, dark wood, walls of glass, minimal and severe, like a piece of architecture that dared you to find it beautiful. The grounds were immaculate. There was a koi pond near the entrance. A separate guest house sat behind the main structure, smaller but just as sleek. Sharon parked, grabbed her one suitcase, and walked to the front entrance. Before she could knock, the door opened. A Korean woman in her 50s stood there. She was slim, impeccably dressed in a cream blouse and tailored slacks, and her expression was the kind of neutral that was actually deeply unfriendly. This was Mrs. Cho, the household manager. "You're the new one," Mrs. Cho said, not a question. "Yes, ma'am, Sharon Monroe." Mrs. Cho looked at Sharon's suitcase. One suitcase. Something flickered across her face, maybe judgment, maybe something else, and then she stepped aside. "Come in, there are rules." There were a lot of rules. Mrs. Cho handed Sharon a printed schedule. It was 22 pages long. Every hour of every day was mapped out in precise detail. Which rooms to clean and when, what time meals should be prepared and where they should be served, when to be visible and when to vanish. The instructions were exhaustive and completely non-negotiable. The big ones were these: never enter Mr. Kang's private study on the 2nd floor. Never speak to him unless spoken to. Never be in the main hallway when he has guests. Never use the front entrance. Always use the service door on the east side of the house. Address him as Mr. Kang, never by his first name. Do not make eye contact for extended periods. Sharon nodded through all of it. She had worked in wealthy homes before. Every rich person had their particular set of rules. Some were stranger than others. She had once worked for a tech executive in Saratoga who required all staff to wear slippers indoors and communicate only through a messaging app, even when they were standing in the same room. Compared to that, a 22-page schedule was manageable. Mrs. Cho led Sharon to the guest house, which would be her living quarters. It was nicer than any apartment Sharon had ever rented. 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, a bathroom with a walk-in shower. Clean and simple. "Mr. Kang values order above all else," Mrs. Cho said from the doorway. If you can provide that, you will be fine. If you cannot, it has been nice meeting you." She left. For the first 2 weeks, Sharon barely saw Woo Jin. He left early in the morning. He came home late. When he was home, he was locked in his study or on calls that Sharon could hear faintly through the walls. Rapid Korean, sharp and commanding, the kind of voice that did not ask for things but stated how things would be. She caught glimpses of him, tall, lean, sharp features, always perfectly dressed, even at home, as though relaxation was a concept he had heard about but never practiced. He moved through his own house like a man passing through a hotel lobby, present but not attached. He did not acknowledge her existence. Sharon cleaned around him like he was a piece of furniture that happened to breathe. She did her job flawlessly. She followed the 22-page schedule to the minute. She memorized the kitchen layout in 2 days. She learned which cleaning products were approved and which were banned. She figured out that Mrs. Cho inspected the master bathroom every morning by running a finger along the top of the mirror frame, so Sharon started wiping the mirror frame twice. By the end of the 2nd week, Mrs. Cho's expression shifted from suspicion to something approaching grudging respect. "The last girl rearranged the spice cabinet," Mrs. Cho told her one morning. "She was gone by lunch." "I would never rearrange someone else's spice cabinet," Sharon said. Mrs. Cho almost smiled. Almost. The first real interaction with Woo Jin happened during the 3rd week. Sharon was cleaning the 2nd-floor library. She was not supposed to be there at that hour. Woo Jin's schedule had shifted without notice because a conference call had been canceled, and nobody had updated the staff calendar. Sharon was dusting the shelves with her earbuds in, listening to a podcast about financial literacy that Desmond had recommended, when she turned around and found Woo Jin standing in the doorway. He was in a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms and dark trousers. His arms were crossed. He was watching her with an expression she could not read. Not angry, not annoyed. More like curious, the way someone watches an animal that has wandered into a space where it does not belong. Sharon pulled out her earbuds. Her heart jumped, but she kept her face calm. "I apologize, Mr. Kang. Your schedule changed and I wasn't informed. I'll come back later." She started gathering her supplies. He did not move from the doorway. "You're the one who hasn't quit," he said. His English was fluent, with the faintest trace of an accent that softened certain consonants. His voice was lower than she expected. Sharon looked at him. She knew the rules. Do not make extended eye contact. Do not speak unless spoken to. But he had spoken to her, and she was tired. She was always tired. "I need the job more than I need to quit," she said. Something moved across his face. Not a smile, not quite, but a shift like a locked door being tested. He walked past her, close enough that she caught the scent of something clean and subtle, and pulled a book from one of the upper shelves. It was a slim volume with Korean text on the spine. He sat down in the leather chair by the window and opened the book without another word. He did not ask her to leave. Sharon hesitated. Then she went back to dusting. She finished the room while he read. Neither of them spoke again. The only sounds were the soft swish of her cloth against the shelves and the occasional whisper of a page turning. When she left the room 20 minutes later, she paused in the hallway. Her heart was beating faster than it should have been, and she could not figure out why. He had barely said anything. He had barely looked at her. But the silence in that room had felt different from any silence she had experienced before. It felt like the beginning of something she did not have a name for yet. That evening, Sharon called Desmond. He answered on the 5th ring, which was unusual. He was normally glued to his phone. "Hey," he said. His voice was flat, distracted. "Hey yourself, how's the studying going?" "Fine." "Des, talk to me." A long pause, then, "I kind of need some money." Sharon's stomach tightened. "How much?" "Like 300, maybe 4. "For what?" Another pause, longer this time. "I borrowed some cash from this guy on campus. It was supposed to be short-term, but the interest kind of got out of hand. I just need to pay him back so he stops texting me." "What guy? Desmond, what are you talking about?" It's handled, Shar. I just need the money. It was not handled. Sharon could hear it in his voice. But she was in Atherton, 250 miles from UCLA, and she could not leave. She transferred $300 from her savings account, money she did not have to spare, and told Desmond to call her if anything else came up. He said he would. She did not believe him. She sat on the bed in the guest house and stared at the ceiling and thought about the man in the library who had said her job title like it was a test, and looked at her like she was the first real thing he had seen in a very long time. It started with books. The morning after their conversation in the library, Sharon went back to clean the room at her scheduled time and found a book left on the side table next to the leather chair. It was a collection of Korean poetry translated into English. A yellow sticky note was pressed to the cover. In precise handwriting, it said, "Page 34. Sharon turned to page 34. The poem was about a river that carved through a mountain, not by force, but by patience. By showing up every single day and pressing gently against the stone until the stone had no choice but to open. She read it 3 times. She should have put the book back. She should have ignored it. She was the housekeeper. He was Kang Woo-jin. The distance between them was not a gap. It was a canyon. But Sharon had always loved reading. It was the one luxury she allowed herself. Library books, free e-books, used paperbacks from thrift stores. Reading was the only space in her life where she did not have to be invisible. She left a small sticky note in the margin of page 34. She wrote, "This one was sad but beautiful." The next day, the note was gone. A new book was on the table, with a different poem bookmarked. This one was about the Korean concept of jeong, a deep, almost untranslatable bond that forms between people through shared time and experience, something deeper than love and more stubborn than fate. They never discussed the books, not once, but every day a new one appeared, and every day Sharon left a small note, and every day the note disappeared. It was the quietest conversation she had ever had with another human being, and somehow it said more than words. Then the late night started. Sharon was an early riser. She woke at 4:30 every morning to prep the kitchen before Mrs. Cho arrived at 6. One night, she was up at 11, unable to sleep, making herself chamomile tea in the main kitchen when Woo-jin walked in. He was wearing a plain black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. No suit, no armor. He looked younger without the formal clothes, more human. He saw Sharon and stopped in the doorway, and for a second both of them seemed unsure what to do. Then he walked to the counter, pulled out a teapot, and began making tea. Korean barley tea. He did it with the focused precision he seemed to apply to everything. Sharon stood on the other side of the kitchen island, holding her mug, watching him. He sat down at the counter. She stayed standing. They drank their tea in silence. The second night it happened, he asked her where she was from. "Bakersfield originally," Sharon said. "Then we moved around a lot after my mom got sick. Fresno for a while, then Oakland, then here, well, not here, East Palo Alto." "Your mother?" "She passed, 6 years ago, cancer." Woo-jin nodded. He did not say he was sorry. He did not give her the sad-eyed look that people always gave when she mentioned her mother. He just nodded, like he understood something about loss that went beyond polite condolences. "And your brother?" he asked. "Desmond." Sharon blinked. She had not told him about Desmond, which meant Mrs. Cho had briefed him or he had looked into her background himself. She was not sure how she felt about that. "He's at UCLA," she said. "Sophomore pre-law track." "Smart. The smartest person I know." The third night, Woo-jin said something that stopped Sharon in her tracks. They were sitting at the counter again, the kitchen dimly lit, the house silent around them, and out of nowhere, he said, "I hate this house." Sharon looked at him. "It's too big for one person," he said. He was staring into his tea. "I bought it because my business partners expected it. A man in my position lives a certain way, in a certain zip code, in a certain kind of house. So I bought the house, and I furnished the house. And I walk through it every day and it feels like a museum exhibit that someone forgot to put a rope across." It was the most human thing anyone in this world had ever said to her. Sharon felt something shift inside her chest, like a lock clicking open. "So why don't you move?" she asked. He looked up at her. A faint, almost invisible smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Because then I'd have to admit that a $300 million real estate portfolio doesn't make a place feel like home." Sharon held his gaze. "What does?" He didn't answer, but the way he looked at her, steady, open, unguarded, was answer enough. Over the next few weeks, Sharon began to understand who Kang Woo-jin actually was. He ran the Kang Group, a legitimate conglomerate with holdings in commercial real estate, luxury hospitality, and tech venture capital. The company owned properties in Palo Alto, Scottsdale, Newport Beach, and Manhattan. It employed over 3,000 people. Woo-jin had built the modern version of the company almost from scratch, taking a regional operation with a complicated past and transforming it into a respected, fully legitimate empire. But the past followed him like a shadow. His father, Kang Sung-ho, had built the family's early fortune through underground gambling networks in the 90s. The old man had been ruthless, feared in Korean-American communities from Los Angeles to New York. He died when Woo-jin was 23, leaving behind a mountain of money and an even bigger mountain of reputation. Woo-jin spent the last 8 years cleaning the business, severing every connection to the old world, going fully legitimate. He had succeeded on paper. Every audit was clean, every deal was legal, every dollar was accounted for. But the media still called the Kang Group a syndicate. Federal investigators still opened files on his transactions, and rivals used the old rumors like weapons, whispering about dirty money and family blood whenever it served their interests. Woo-jin carried this weight in silence. He never defended himself publicly. He never explained. He just worked. Sharon understood that kind of silence. She had been carrying her own weight quietly for years. One night, about 6 weeks into her placement, Sharon heard a crash from the kitchen. She ran in from the guest house and found Woo-jin standing in front of the counter with broken glass at his feet. A shelf had come loose from the wall and he had tried to catch it. His right hand was bleeding, a deep gash across his palm from a shattered glass. Mrs. Cho was not in the house. The other staff had gone home. It was just the two of them. Sharon did not hesitate. She grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink, guided him to the counter, and turned on the water. She took his hand and held it under the stream, gently pulling a sliver of glass from the cut. His hand was larger than hers, and she could feel the tension in his fingers, like he was not used to being touched. She dried the wound, applied antiseptic, and began wrapping it with gauze. She was focused, efficient, careful, and then she looked up and saw that his eyes were red. Not from pain, from something else, something deeper. She did not ask what was wrong. She understood, instinctively, that asking would make him close up. So she finished wrapping his hand and said quietly, "You don't have to be made of stone all the time." Woo-jin stared at her. The kitchen was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of wind outside. His eyes searched her face like he was looking for something he had given up on finding. Then, for the first time, he said her name, not the housekeeper, not Miss Monroe. "Sharon." The way he said it, soft and deliberate, it sounded like a man who had been holding his breath for years and just finally let it go. What grew between them was not a fairy tale. There was no grand romantic gesture, no roses, no sweep-you-off-your-feet moment. It was two people who had spent their entire lives performing strength, slowly letting the performance drop. They spent evenings together. Sharon cooked, Southern recipes her mother had taught her. Cornbread, smothered chicken, collard greens cooked slow with smoked turkey necks. Woo-jin sat at the kitchen counter and watched her cook and asked questions about every recipe and once tried to help chop onions and cut himself again because he held the knife like someone who had never been inside a kitchen without paid staff. Sharon laughed, actually laughed. The sound surprised both of them. She had not laughed like that, loose and unguarded, in longer than she could remember. He told her things, real things. He told her about the pressure of running the Kang Group, about how the Korean-American business community scrutinized every decision he made. About how his mother, who lived in Seoul, called every Sunday and asked when he was going to marry a proper Korean girl from a proper Korean family. About how he had been engaged once, years ago, to the daughter of a Seoul shipping magnate, and had broken it off because the woman did not know his middle name after 2 years of dating. "She knew my net worth down to the decimal," he said, "but she didn't know I can't sleep without the window open." Sharon told him things too, about her mother, about watching cancer eat Patricia Monroe alive over 18 months while Sharon was supposed to be studying for midterms, about dropping out and picking up a mop and never putting it down, about Desmond, and how she sometimes loved her brother so fiercely it felt like a physical ache in her ribs, and how she sometimes resented him just a little for getting the life she gave up, and how the guilt of that resentment ate her alive. "You're allowed to want things for yourself," Woo-jin said. "No," Sharon said, "I'm not yet." "When?" "When he graduates, when he's safe, when he doesn't need me anymore." "And then what?" Sharon looked at him. "I don't know. Nobody's ever asked me that before." They did not kiss. They did not cross a physical line. But the emotional intimacy between them was deeper than anything either of them had ever experienced. It was the kind of connection that forms when two people stop performing and start being honest, and it terrified both of them. Then Desmond's situation exploded. Sharon got a call at 1 a.m. Desmond was whispering, his voice tight with panic. The guy on campus he had borrowed money from was not just one guy. It was a group, wealthy students running a predatory peer lending ring that targeted scholarship kids who couldn't access traditional credit. They charged insane interest. They made threats. Desmond now owed them $11,000, and they were threatening to report him to the university for academic fraud. The fraud accusation was a lie, but it was the kind of lie that could get his scholarship revoked and his enrollment suspended. Sharon's blood went cold. $11,000. She did not have $11,000. She did not have $1,100. "I'll figure it out," she told Desmond. "Do not talk to those people again, do you hear me? Do not engage." She hung up and sat on the edge of her bed in the guest house, pressing her hands against her temples, trying to think. She started looking for second jobs on her phone. Weekend cleaning gigs, night shifts at restaurants, anything. Over the next few days, Woo-jin noticed the change in her. Sharon was exhausted. She was making small mistakes, leaving a window open, forgetting to restock the bathroom. Not major things, but enough for Mrs. Cho to raise an eyebrow. Woo-jin found Sharon asleep at the kitchen counter at 4 a.m, her phone open on the counter next to her, the screen showing a bank transfer page. He did not say anything to her, but the next day, he asked Mrs. Cho to quietly look into what was going on. When Woo-jin found out about Desmond's situation, he acted. He did not tell Sharon. He did not ask for permission. Within 48 hours, the peer lending ring was reported to UCLA's administration through an anonymous tip. The university launched an investigation. The students involved were suspended. Desmond's debt was wiped clean. His scholarship was secure. Desmond called Sharon 3 days later, confused and relieved. "Shar, the whole thing just went away. Like, completely. The school shut them down. I don't owe anything." Sharon was quiet for a long moment. "That's great, Des," she said, but her mind was already working. That evening, she found Woo-jin in the library. He was reading. He looked up when she walked in. "Did you do something?" Sharon asked. No preamble, no small talk. "You'll need to be more specific." "Desmond, the lending ring. $11,000 and a university investigation that appeared out of thin air. Did you do something?" Woo-jin held her gaze. "Why would I do something like that?" "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I have." Sharon stared at him. She could see it in his eyes, the quiet certainty of a man who had done exactly what she was accusing him of and felt absolutely no guilt about it. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to tell him that she did not need saving, that she had been handling things on her own for 6 years, and she did not need some rich man swooping in to solve her problems. But she was so tired. She was so unbelievably tired of handling everything alone. She sat down in the chair across from him. Neither of them spoke. The library was quiet. Outside, the Atherton night was dark and still. Then Wu Jin reached across the space between them and held out his hand, palm up. An offering, not a demand. Sharon looked at his hand. She looked at him. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. And something inside Sharon, some wall she had been building since she was 20 years old, standing in a hospital hallway being told her mother was gone, began to crack. The first kiss happened 2 weeks later. It was late, past midnight. They were in the library, which had become their place. Sharon was sitting on the floor next to his chair, reading one of the poetry books. Wu Jin was above her, reading something on his tablet. The room was lit by a single lamp. Sharon read a line aloud. A poem about two people who were never supposed to meet, but kept finding each other in every lifetime, in every city, in every version of the world. Her voice was soft. When she finished, she looked up and found Wu Jin looking down at her with an expression that made her breath stop. He reached down and touched her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone. Sharon closed her eyes. "I'm your housekeeper," she whispered. "I know," he said. "This is a terrible idea." "I know." She opened her eyes. "Then why does it feel like the only true thing in this house?" Wu Jin leaned down. Sharon leaned up. The kiss was soft and trembling and full of everything neither of them had the words for. It lasted only a few seconds. But when they pulled apart, something had shifted fundamentally. There was no going back. In the weeks that followed, their relationship deepened. Not publicly, never publicly, but within the walls of the estate, within the quiet late-night hours when the rest of the world was asleep, they were two people falling in love with a kind of urgency that only comes when you know the ground beneath you is unstable. Wu Jin started including her in parts of his life. He took her to his property in Newport Beach for a weekend, a private condo overlooking the Pacific. They walked along the water at sunset, and she took photos on her phone, and he looked at her like she was the sunset and the ocean and every beautiful thing he had ever been too busy or too guarded to notice. He gave her a gift, a simple gold bracelet, thin, no diamonds, no flash, just a delicate gold band with a Korean inscription on the inside. Sharon asked him what it meant. "It means you see me," he said. Sharon put it on. She never took it off. She began to feel something she had not allowed herself to feel since her mother died. Hope. Hope that this could be real. That the canyon between them, race, class, culture, power, might not be a wall after all. That maybe, just maybe, she could want something for herself. But walls have a way of making themselves known. And the one that was about to hit Sharon was something she never saw coming. The photos surfaced on a Tuesday. A Korean-American gossip blog called K-Town Confidential published a series of images. Sharon and Wu Jin walking together on the beach in Newport Beach. The photos were grainy, clearly taken from a distance with a long lens, but they were unmistakable. In one, Wu Jin was looking at Sharon in a way that left nothing to interpretation. In another, their hands were close together, almost touching. The headline read, "Kang Air's secret, housemaid or mistress." The comment section was a cesspool. Racism, classism, mockery, people speculating about what Sharon must be doing to keep her position, people questioning Wu Jin's judgment, people saying things so ugly that Sharon read 3 comments and had to put her phone down because her hands were shaking. The Korean-American business community exploded. Wu Jin's mother called from Seoul. The conversation was in Korean, but Sharon could hear the sharp, furious tone from the hallway. Mrs. Cho cornered Sharon the next morning and told her, with a face like stone, that she was destroying Mr. Kang's reputation and needed to consider leaving. Board members of the Kang Group requested an emergency meeting. Wu Jin's business rivals sent subtle, poisonous messages through intermediaries. The message was clear. Kang Wu Jin has lost his mind. He is compromised. He is distracted. Sharon looked at the article again that evening. She read the comments, every racist joke, every assumption that she was a gold digger, every implication that a black woman from Bakersfield had no business breathing the same air as a man like Kang Wu Jin. The words did not surprise her. She had heard variations of them her entire life. What destroyed her was something deeper, the recognition that no matter what she did, no matter how hard she worked, no matter how real this thing between them was, the world would always see her as someone who did not belong, as someone who was not enough. She packed her suitcase. Woo Jin found her in the guest house 30 minutes later. She was zipping the bag. She did not look up when he walked in. "Don't," he said. "I'm not going to be the thing that ruins you," Sharon said. "You are the only thing that hasn't ruined me." She stopped. Her hand was still on the zipper. She could feel the tears pressing behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had spent her whole life refusing to let them fall. "Your mother hates me," she said. "Your board wants me gone. Your whole community is laughing at you. I'm not worth that, Woo Jin." He crossed the room in 3 steps. He took her hands. He looked at her with those dark, serious eyes and said, "You don't get to decide what you're worth to me." She stayed. But the fracture was there, hairline thin and spreading. And somewhere out there, the man who had leaked the photos was watching, waiting, smiling. His name was Victor Rhee. 40 years old, Harvard MBA, head of Rhee Capital, a private equity firm with offices in Manhattan and San Francisco. Victor was polished, articulate, and extraordinarily dangerous, not with weapons, but with strategy. He was the kind of man who smiled while he handed you a glass of champagne and had already wired your career into a shredder before you finished the first sip. Victor had been trying to absorb the Kang Group's hospitality division for over a year. The hotels, the luxury residences, the commercial properties in Scottsdale and Newport Beach, they were worth over $700 million, and Victor wanted them. Woo Jin had refused every offer. He would rather burn the buildings down than let Victor Rhee put his name on them. The rivalry was personal. 5 years ago, Woo Jin had uncovered evidence of financial fraud in one of Victor's hedge funds, inflated returns, phantom accounts, investor deception. Woo Jin had turned the evidence over to regulators. Victor lost $80 million, his seat on the Pacific Rim Business Council, and 2 years of his life fighting off SEC investigations. He survived. Barely. But the humiliation had burrowed into his bones like a parasite. Victor could not touch Woo Jin through business. The Kang Group's legal protections were a fortress, so Victor needed another way in. When he saw the gossip blog photos, he saw his weapon. 3 weeks after the leak, Sharon was alone at a farmer's market in Atherton, buying produce for the week. A man in a cashmere coat approached her near the citrus stand. He was handsome in a practiced, careful way, like someone who had studied which smile to use in which situation. "Sharon Monroe," he said. She tensed. "Who's asking?" "My name is Victor Rhee. I'm a friend of Woo Jin's. Well, former friend, I'd love to buy you a coffee if you have a minute. There's something I think you deserve to know." Sharon should have walked away. Every instinct she had, the instincts she had developed over years of navigating wealthy people's worlds, told her this man was dangerous. But Victor had one weapon that overrode all of Sharon's defenses. He seemed sympathetic. He looked at her without judgment. He spoke to her like an equal, and he said 3 words that cracked her open. "You deserve the truth." Over coffee at a quiet cafe, Victor told Sharon a carefully constructed story. He told her that the Kang Group was not as clean as Woo Jin pretended, that the company's real estate division had been securing city development contracts in Beverly Hills and Scottsdale through illegal means, shell companies funneling money into political donations to influence zoning decisions. He showed her documents, bank records, transfer logs, company names she had never heard of. It all looked damning. He told her federal investigators were already building a case, but needed someone on the inside to confirm what they suspected. Someone with access to Woo Jin's home, to his private study, to the financial records he kept locked away. "I'm not asking you to betray him," Victor said. "I'm asking you to save him. If he cooperates, he walks away with a fine. If he fights it, he's looking at federal prison. Years. Is that what you want for him?" He gave her a business card. It read, "Special Agent Diana Marsh, FBI White Collar Division." A phone number was printed below. "Call her," Victor said. "She can explain everything." Sharon took the card. She did not call it that day, or the next. She lay awake in the guest house for 3 nights, turning the conversation over in her mind. She thought about the shell companies. She thought about Woo Jin's father and the gambling networks. She thought about how Woo Jin never talked about certain parts of his business. How he sometimes took calls behind closed doors and his voice went flat and hard and unfamiliar. What if he wasn't as clean as he said? What if the man she loved was still hiding things from her, the way he hid things from everyone? On the 4th night, she called the number. The woman who answered identified herself as Agent Diana Marsh. She was professional, calm, reassuring. She told Sharon the same story Victor had told, but with more detail, more urgency. She said the investigation was moving forward with or without Sharon's help, but insider confirmation would allow them to build a stronger case for a plea deal, one that could keep Woo Jin out of prison entirely. "We're not trying to destroy him," the woman said. "We're trying to give him a way out." Sharon agreed to help, not because she wanted to betray Woo Jin. She agreed because she loved him, and she was terrified that the life he had built, the legitimate empire, the clean record, the future they had barely begun to imagine together, was sitting on a foundation of lies. She was wrong about all of it. One night while Woo Jin was in Manhattan for a board meeting, Sharon entered his private study. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She found a locked drawer and opened it with a key she had seen Mrs. Cho use. Inside were files, bank statements, transfer records, company names and account numbers. She photographed everything and sent it to Agent Marsh. What Sharon did not know was that those files were records for a charity foundation Woo Jin had been running for the past 4 years. The shell companies were not fronts for corruption. They were anonymous entities Woo Jin used to funnel money into educational scholarships for underprivileged students across the country. He had structured them anonymously because he did not want the Kang name attached to the charity. The Kang name still carried the shadow of his father's past, and he did not want scholarship recipients stigmatized by association with a family the media still called a syndicate. There were 214 students across 12 universities being funded by those accounts. Woo Jin had never told a single person about the foundation, not Sharon, not Mrs. Cho, not his own mother. Victor knew about it. He had discovered it through a private investigator months ago, and he had taken those innocent financial records and reframed them, doctored context, fabricated narratives, to make them look like evidence of exactly the kind of financial crime Sharon was afraid of. Now, with Sharon's photographs as insider confirmation, Victor fed the fabricated evidence through back channels to a real federal prosecutor. The prosecutor, eager for a high-profile case involving a family with the Kang reputation, opened an official investigation. Within days, the Kang Group's assets in Beverly Hills and Scottsdale were frozen. Woo Jin was summoned to appear before a federal grand jury. And Sharon Monroe, the woman who loved Kang Woo Jin more than she had ever loved anything in her life, had just become the prosecution's star witness. The trial began on a cold Monday morning in Beverly Hills. Sharon sat in a witness preparation room on the 3rd floor of the federal courthouse, staring at her reflection in a darkened window. She barely recognized herself. She had lost weight. She had not slept more than 3 hours a night in weeks. The gold bracelet was still on her wrist. She had tried to take it off the day the charges were filed against Woo Jin. She couldn't do it. Her fingers went to the clasp and simply refused to open it. The prosecution's case was built like a machine. Prosecutor Angela Torres presented the shell company records, the bank transfers, Sharon's photographs. She called forensic accountants who testified that the financial structure was consistent with patterns seen in money-funneling operations. She called a political consultant who explained how improper donations could influence zoning decisions in high-value real estate markets. It was all technically accurate, and it was all completely wrong. The financial structure was consistent with a money-funneling scheme the same way a kitchen knife is consistent with a murder weapon. Just because something could be used for harm did not mean it was. But the jury did not know that, and the judge did not know that. And Sharon, sitting in that witness chair, answering every question the prosecutor asked, did not know that yet either. She testified for nearly an hour. She confirmed her access to the home. She confirmed the photographs. She confirmed the timeline. She kept her voice steady. She did not look at Wu Jin. But throughout the trial, something was nagging at her. Small details that didn't add up. The prosecutor mentioned specific account numbers and routing details that Sharon had never provided, information that could only come from someone who had been tracking Wu Jin's finances for years, not from a few photographs taken in a dark study. She noticed that Agent Diana Marsh was not listed on any of the prosecution's witness rolls. She was not in the courtroom. She was not mentioned in any filing. And in the gallery, 3 rows from the front, sat Victor Ree. He was wearing a dark suit and watching the proceedings with the faint, satisfied smile of a man watching a chess game he had already won. During the lunch recess, Sharon stepped out of the courtroom. Her head was pounding. She went to the hallway, pulled out her phone, and called the FBI's main public line. "I need to speak to Special Agent Diana Marsh," she said. "White Collar Division." A pause, typing. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We have no agent by that name in the White Collar Division. Could you be thinking of a different office?" "No, White Collar, Diana Marsh. I've been communicating with her for months." More typing, a longer pause. "Ma'am, I've checked our entire directory. There is no Diana Marsh currently employed by the FBI in any division." Sharon's phone slipped in her sweating hand. She caught it. She leaned against the hallway wall because her legs were suddenly not working. There was no Agent Marsh. There had never been an Agent Marsh. The woman she had been sending photographs to, the woman who had reassured her that she was doing the right thing, the woman who had made her believe she was saving Wu Jin, she was a fake. Planted by Victor Ree. The whole thing was a setup. Victor had manufactured the entire narrative. He had used Sharon's love for Wu Jin, her fear for him, her access to his home, as a delivery system for fabricated evidence. And Sharon had hand-carried the bomb right through the front door. She stumbled back toward the courtroom. She tried to get to the prosecutor. She tried to explain. But Angela Torres looked at her with cold, professional eyes and said, "Miss Monroe, your testimony is already on the record. If you recant now, you will be opening yourself up to perjury charges. I strongly advise you to consult with an attorney before you say anything else." Sharon was trapped. Legally, morally, emotionally. She had testified under oath to things she now knew were built on lies, but taking it back could send her to prison. She went back into the courtroom. She sat down. She felt like she was underwater. Like the whole room was filled with something heavy and thick, and she was drowning in it, slowly, in front of 100 people who could not see her gasping. And then Wu Jin's attorney stood up and said the words that brought the story full circle. "Your Honor, my client has waived his right to a formal closing statement. Instead, he is requesting permission to address the court directly with a personal confession." Wu Jin stood. He buttoned his jacket. He walked to the center of the courtroom. The room was absolutely silent, not courtroom quiet, silent. The kind of silence that happens when every person in a room simultaneously holds their breath. He did not face the judge. He did not face the jury. He faced Sharon. "I'm not going to stand here and defend my business records," he said. "My lawyers can do that. That's their job. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about the person sitting in that chair." Sharon's nails dug into her palms. She could not breathe. "The prosecution says I used shell companies to funnel money into political influence campaigns. That's what the documents look like, I'm told. If you don't know what you're looking at, I understand how someone could believe that." He paused. His voice was steady, but there was something beneath it, a current of emotion that he was controlling with visible effort, like a man holding back a river with his bare hands. "Those shell companies fund a charity foundation I established 4 years ago. The foundation provides full financial support, tuition, housing, books, living expenses, to first-generation college students from underserved communities across the United States. The accounts are anonymized because I did not want my family name attached to the program. My family name still carries a certain reputation, a reputation I did not earn, but one I inherited. And I did not want students, young people trying to build their futures, to carry the weight of my family's past on their shoulders along with their textbooks. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a single sheet of paper. His attorney had clearly prepared it. There are currently 214 students across 12 universities being funded by those accounts. I won't read all their names, but I'll read 3. He read the first name, a young woman studying pre-med at Howard University. He read the second, a young man studying mechanical engineering at Georgia Tech. Then he paused. He looked at Sharon. His jaw tightened. The third student is a sophomore at UCLA, pre-law track. His name is Desmond Monroe. The courtroom gasped, not a small gasp, the kind of collective inhale that sounds like the room itself just flinched. Sharon's hand flew to her mouth. Desmond Monroe is Sharon's younger brother, Woo Jin continued. 4 months ago, he was in trouble. A predatory lending ring on campus had him trapped. He owed $11,000 and they were threatening to destroy his academic standing. Sharon didn't know how to help him. She was terrified, so I helped him. I reported the lending ring to the university. I cleared his debt, and I added him to the foundation's roster to make sure his funding gap was covered permanently. Not because Sharon asked me to. She never asked me for anything. Not once. I did it because Desmond reminded me of myself at 19, trying to build something with no safety net, trying to earn a name that wasn't already written for him. He folded the paper and put it back in his jacket. Sharon Monroe came into my home as a housekeeper. She followed every rule. She was invisible, the way this world teaches people like her to be invisible. But I saw her. I saw her reading poetry in my library at 6 in the morning. I saw her cooking her mother's recipes in my kitchen at midnight. I saw her wiring every dollar she earned to a brother who doesn't even know how much she sacrificed for him. I saw a woman who was so busy carrying everyone else that she forgot she was allowed to be carried too. His voice cracked, just barely, just enough for everyone in that courtroom to hear a man who had spent his entire life being made of stone finally allow the stone to fracture. I loved her, he said. I still love her, even now, even standing here in this courtroom after everything. He paused, took a breath. She testified against me today. She sat in that chair and she told this court things she believed were true. And I want the record to reflect that I do not blame her, not for any of it. She was manipulated by someone who saw her love for me and used it as a weapon. She believed she was protecting me. And if she needed to stand in that chair and say what she said in order to feel like she was doing the right thing, then I accept it. Because the only crime I'm guilty of is letting someone in. And I would do it again. Silence. Then Sharon broke. The sound that came out of her was not crying. It was deeper than that. It was the sound of a woman whose entire understanding of reality had just been dismantled and rebuilt in the space of 5 minutes. It was grief and love and guilt and relief all colliding inside her chest at the same time, and her body could not contain it. She sobbed. Her shoulders shook. The bailiff stepped forward and she pushed him away, and she stood up from the witness chair and leaned into the microphone and said 4 words that echoed through the silent courtroom. He's telling the truth. Then she kept talking. She requested permission to amend her testimony. The judge, visibly shaken, allowed it. Sharon told the court about Victor Ree, about the farmer's market, about the fake agent, about the phone number that connected to a woman who did not exist. She told them to check the FBI's records. There was no Diana Marsh. There had never been a Diana Marsh. I was used, Sharon said. Her voice was raw. Victor Ree fed me a lie and I believed it because I was scared. I was scared that the man I love was hiding something from me. And the only thing he was hiding was that he was helping my brother. He was helping 214 kids he'd never even met. And I took photographs of that and handed them to the man who wanted to destroy him. The judge ordered an immediate investigation. Court was adjourned pending review. Within 72 hours, the FBI traced the fabricated evidence back to Victor Ree. The fake Diana Marsh was identified as a licensed private investigator on Victor's payroll. The shell company documents were audited by an independent forensic accounting firm and confirmed as a legitimate charitable structure with full tax-exempt status. Every single accusation in the prosecution's case collapsed. Victor Ree was arrested at his penthouse in Manhattan on a Tuesday morning. The charges included fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. His bail was set at $5 million. The case against Kang Woo-jin was dismissed with prejudice. The judge issued a rare public apology from the bench, calling the prosecution's reliance on fabricated evidence a profound failure of this court's duty to seek truth. Woo-jin walked out of the courthouse and into the California sun. The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted. He did not stop. He did not make a statement. He walked straight to the black SUV waiting at the curb, got in, and closed the door. On the seat beside him was the book of Korean poetry, the one with Sharon's sticky note still pressed between the pages. This one was sad but beautiful. He picked it up. He held it in his lap. And for the first time in 8 years, since his father's funeral, since the day he decided he would never let anyone see him vulnerable again, Kang Woo-jin put his head in his hands and cried. Sharon disappeared. Not dramatically, not in a way that made the news. She simply packed her suitcase, the same one she had arrived with 5 months ago, and left the Kang estate the night the case was dismissed. She did not leave a note. She did not say goodbye to Mrs. Cho. She drove her 12-year-old Honda Civic out through the iron gates and did not look in the rearview mirror because she knew that if she did, she would turn around, and she did not deserve to turn around. She checked into a motel in San Jose. It was the kind of place that charged by the week and had a vending machine in the hallway that only dispensed Diet Coke and regret. She sat on the thin mattress and stared at the wall and replayed every moment of the last 5 months in her head. Every book left on the library table. Every late-night conversation. Every lie Victor Ree had told her. Every photograph she had taken in Woo-jin's study with her trembling hands. She had almost destroyed the only person who had ever truly seen her. The only person who had looked at Sharon Monroe, broke, tired, invisible Sharon Monroe, and decided she was worth loving. She had taken that love and she had weaponized it, and the fact that she did it unknowingly, the fact that Victor Ree was the real villain, did not ease the guilt, because Sharon was the one who had chosen to believe a stranger over the man she loved. She was the one who had gone into his study. She was the one who had taken the photographs. She did not eat for 2 days. She barely slept. She called in sick to the staffing agency and then called back an hour later and quit entirely. She had $308 in her bank account and no plan and no future, and she was so deep inside her own guilt that she could not see daylight. On the 3rd day, Desmond showed up. He knocked on the motel door at 9 in the morning. When Sharon opened it, he took one look at her, the unwashed hair, the dark circles, the vacant eyes, and pushed past her into the room without waiting for an invitation. "No," he said. "No what?" "No, you don't get to do this. You don't get to disappear into some motel and punish yourself until there's nothing left. That's not how this works. Des, you don't understand what I did. I understand exactly what you did. I also understand why you did it. And I understand that the man whose charity has been paying for my education called me personally 2 days ago, not to talk about the trial, not to ask about you, to make sure my scholarship funding was going to continue regardless of what happened. Do you hear me, Sharon? He called me. After everything. He called to make sure I was okay." Sharon sat down on the bed. Her legs gave out. "That man loves you," Desmond said. "And you love him. I've known it since the first time you mentioned his name on the phone 3 months ago because your voice did something it hasn't done since Mom was alive. It got soft. It got hopeful. And I haven't heard that in 6 years. I betrayed him. You were tricked. There's a difference. And the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why you need to stop sitting in this motel feeling sorry for yourself and go talk to him." "He won't want to see me." Desmond sat down next to her. He was 19 years old, but in that moment, he looked older. He looked like the man their mother had always believed he would become. "Shar," he said quietly, "you've spent 6 years taking care of me. You dropped out of school for me. You worked jobs that made you invisible for me. You gave up everything so I could have a chance. And I love you for that. But I'm not going to let you give up the one thing you've ever wanted for yourself just because you're too stubborn to ask for forgiveness." He put his arm around her. She leaned into him, and for the first time in 3 days she cried. Not the explosive public sobs from the courtroom, quiet tears, the kind that wash something clean. The next morning, Sharon drove to Atherton. The iron gates of the Kang estate were open. Not broken, not malfunctioning. Open, as if they were waiting. She parked her car in the same spot she had parked it 5 months ago, the day she arrived with 1 suitcase and 0 expectations. She walked to the service entrance on the east side of the house, the one Mrs. Cho had told her to always use, never the front door. She stopped. She looked at the front entrance, the one she had never been allowed to walk through. She walked through the front door. The house was quiet, the same muted tones, the same clean lines, the same cold, beautiful architecture that Woo Jin had once told her felt like a museum. But something was different. There were small signs of disorder that the old Woo Jin would never have allowed. A jacket draped over a chair in the hallway. A coffee mug on the kitchen counter, unwashed. A book left open on the stairs. Sharon walked up to the 2nd floor. She walked down the hallway to the library. The door was open. Woo Jin was sitting in the leather chair by the window. The same chair. The same position. He was holding the book of Korean poetry. The slim volume with the yellow sticky note that Sharon had written on months ago. This one was sad but beautiful. The note was still there, pressed between the pages like a flower someone had been keeping alive long after the season ended. He looked up when she appeared in the doorway. His face was thinner than she remembered. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before. The trial had taken something out of him, not just professionally, personally. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out and was still standing only because his skeleton refused to give up. But when he saw her, something happened to his expression. Not a smile, not yet, but a loosening. Like a fist that had been clenched for so long the muscles had forgotten how to relax, slowly, painfully opening. Sharon stood in the doorway. Her hands were at her sides. The gold bracelet was on her wrist. She had never taken it off. Not even during the trial, not even in the motel. "I don't know how to ask you to forgive me," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She had rehearsed a speech in the car. A long, detailed explanation of everything. Why she believed Victor, why she took the photographs, why she testified. An apology that covered every angle and addressed every sin. But standing here, looking at him, all of those carefully prepared words evaporated, and all that was left was the raw, simple truth. "I don't know how to ask you to forgive me," she repeated. "I just know that I need to, and I know that I love you, and I know that I should have trusted you when it mattered, and I didn't, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life." Woo Jin looked at her. The book was still in his hands. The sticky note was visible between the pages, the edge of it poking out, a small, bright yellow flag in the muted room. "You walked through the front door," he said. Sharon blinked. "What?" "You walked through the front door. You've never done that before." She opened her mouth and closed it. She had not even realized she had done it. "The gate was open," she said. "I know," he said. "I left it open." The words hung in the air. He had left the gate open. Not today, not because he knew she was coming. He had left it open. Like a man leaving a light on in the window for someone who might never come home, but hopping, despite everything, despite the betrayal and the trial and the public humiliation, that she would. "You don't have to ask," he said. "For what?" "Forgiveness. You don't have to ask." Sharon's composure cracked. She crossed the room. She did not sit in the chair across from him. She sat on the floor beside his chair, not because she felt beneath him, but because she wanted to be close, as close as possible. She rested her head against his knee the way she used to during those late-night reading sessions, when the world was quiet and the house felt less like a museum and more like a home. He put his hand on her hair. His fingers were gentle, steady. Neither of them spoke for a long time. The library was filled with late afternoon sun. The book of poetry sat open on the arm of the chair. Outside, the trees moved in a light breeze. Somewhere in the house, a clock ticked. It was enough. For now, it was enough. 6 months later, the Kang Monroe Scholarship Fund held its inaugural public reception at a hotel in Palo Alto. 200 guests, university administrators, business leaders, community organizers, and 47 of the scholarship recipients themselves. College students from across the country who had flown in for the event, most of them seeing the scale of the foundation that had been supporting them for the first time. Woo Jin had gone public with the charity. He had put his name on it, his name and hers, not because Sharon asked, because he wanted the world to know that the best thing he had ever done was connected to her. Sharon stood at the podium and gave a speech. She talked about her mother, about dropping out of school, about the years she spent being invisible, about how the hardest thing she ever did was not testifying in that courtroom, it was learning to believe she deserved to be seen. The room was silent when she finished. Then the applause started. It went on for a long time. She had enrolled in the nonprofit management program at Stanford 3 months ago. She was the oldest person in most of her classes by a few years, and she studied harder than anyone, and she loved every minute of it. She was building something, not just for Desmond anymore, for herself. Woo Jin watched her from the back of the room during her speech, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, and the expression on his face was one that nobody who knew him as the cold, controlled head of the Kang Group would have recognized. It was pride. It was awe. It was the look of a man who had spent his entire life being seen as a name, a net worth, a reputation, and had finally found someone who saw the person underneath all of it. They were together, not hidden anymore, not behind gates or in midnight kitchens, together publicly, unapologetically. It was not always easy. The cultural gap was real. The public scrutiny was constant. There were still people on both sides who thought they did not belong together, but Sharon had stopped caring what those people thought. She had spent 26 years being invisible. She was done with that. Woo Jin's mother flew in from Seoul for the reception. Her name was Kang Mi-suk, and she was a small woman with impeccable posture and a face that gave away nothing. She had been cold toward Sharon initially. Not cruel, just distant in the way that Korean mothers of powerful sons could be when they believed their child was making a mistake. But she watched Sharon that evening. She watched her greet every guest by name. She watched her kneel down to talk to a scholarship student's younger sister, who was shy and hiding behind her mother's leg. She watched Sharon organize the caterers, handle a last-minute seating change, and deliver her speech without a single note card. And she watched the way her son looked at Sharon like a man who had finally stopped holding his breath. At the end of the night, Mi-suk pulled Sharon aside. They stood in a quiet hallway near the coat check. Mi-suk reached up and removed a jade ring from her finger. She had worn it for over 30 years. It had been given to her by her own mother on her wedding day. She took Sharon's hand and pressed the ring into her palm. She closed Sharon's fingers around it. In Korean, she said, "Take care of my son." Sharon did not speak Korean, but she understood. Some things do not need translation. She put the ring on her finger and bowed, a deep, respectful bow that Mrs. Cho had taught her months ago without ever explaining why. Mi-suk's eyes glistened. She patted Sharon's cheek once, quickly, and walked away before either of them could cry. Desmond graduated from UCLA the following spring. Sharon and Woo Jin sat in the front row. When Desmond's name was called and he walked across the stage, Sharon screamed so loud that the people 3 rows back turned around and stared. Woo Jin put 2 fingers in his mouth and whistled. Mrs. Cho, who had somehow been invited and was sitting 2 seats away, flinched at the noise but did not complain. After the ceremony, the 3 of them stood outside the graduation hall. Desmond was holding his diploma and grinning so wide it looked like his face might split open. He had taped a handwritten note inside his graduation cap. It read, "For Mom, for Sharon, for the man who believed in me when he didn't have to." Woo Jin read the note. He looked at Desmond. Then he pulled the 19-year-old into a hug that surprised both of them, the kind of hug that men who are not used to physical affection give when they decide it matters more than their discomfort. Sharon watched them, her brother and the man she loved, standing in the California sun outside a building that represented everything her mother had dreamed of for her children. She thought about Patricia Monroe. She thought about what her mother would say if she could see this moment. She decided her mother would say, "It's about time you let someone take care of you, baby." She laughed. The sound was loose and free, the way it had been that night in the kitchen when Woo Jin tried to chop onions and cut himself. The bracelet on her wrist, the thin gold one, the one she had never taken off, caught the light. The Korean inscription on the inside glinted. "You see me." He always did.